My wife said no one had been at our family cabin since summer. She said it without looking up from her phone. Just one casual sentence over dinner, like she was telling me we needed milk. Nobody's been up there since August, Emily said. Why? I told her I was thinking about taking our daughter Claire to the lake for a weekend. It had been almost a year since my father died, and I thought maybe she was old enough to understand why that place mattered. Emily smiled at that, too quickly. It'll probably need airing out, she said. You know how damp it gets after winter. I nodded. Then I went back to eating. 3 days later, I found the guest book. It was sitting exactly where my father had kept it for 28 years, on the shelf beside the stone fireplace, under a framed photograph of him holding a trout the size of his leg. The cover was worn green leather. My father had carved our family name into it himself with a wood-burning pen. Inside, on a page dated October 14th, were 2 initials, E+M. Underneath them, in handwriting I knew better than my own, were 6 words. Our little place feels like home. My wife's name was Emily, and there was only one man in our lives whose first name began with M. My old friend, Mason Reed, the cabin. My name is Daniel Mercer. I was 46 years old when I found those initials. I live outside Burlington, Vermont, in a gray 2-story house with a porch I still mean to repaint every spring. I run a small restoration company, mostly old homes, water damage, historic woodwork, the kind of work where you have to look past the stain on the wall and figure out what happened behind it. My father used to say I had a talent for seeing what other people missed. I never understood how cruel that could become until I started seeing things in my own marriage. Emily and I had been married for 16 years. We had one daughter, Claire, who was 12 and had recently decided that every family conversation was an embarrassment designed specifically for her. Emily was 42. She worked as a development director for a regional arts nonprofit in Burlington. She was good at it, good with donors, good with names, good at making people feel like their contributions mattered. She had the kind of laugh that made strangers lean closer, the kind of smile that could make a cashier apologize for a mistake before she even pointed it out. I used to be proud of that. Maybe I still was, in some broken way. The cabin had belonged to my father, Walter. He bought the land in 1998 after selling his share of a hardware store in Montpelier. He built the place himself over 4 summers, not alone. He had help from me, my mother, a couple of cousins, and later, when I was old enough, from Mason. Mason Reed had been my friend since high school. We met when we were 15, working weekends at a grocery store. I bagged produce. Mason pushed carts and flirted with every girl who walked through the automatic doors. He was the kind of man people remembered. Tall, easy smile, always knew a story, always knew where to stand in a room so people would turn toward him. I was the opposite. I knew how to fix a sagging door frame, how to read old building plans, how to keep quiet until I understood the problem. Somehow, it worked. Mason had been my best man. He had stood beside me when Emily and I got married in a small white church outside Shelburne. He had held Claire when she was a baby. He had sat with me in the hospital waiting room when my father had his first heart attack. He was family, or close enough that I never thought to question the difference. My father loved Mason. That is the part that still catches in my throat. Walter used to call him the son I borrowed, and Mason used to laugh every time he said it. After my father died, I inherited the cabin. Not because it was worth much on paper. It wasn't. The roof needed work. The plumbing had opinions. Half the windows rattled when the wind came off the lake. But it was the one place where my father had been completely himself. He built the kitchen table from maple he cut on the property. He made the canoe rack by hand. He carved Claire's name into a little wooden sign when she was born. Emily knew all of that, which was why the guest book mattered. The first entry. I had driven up to the cabin alone that Friday afternoon. Claire had a sleepover, and Emily told me she had a fundraising dinner in Burlington. I believed her. At that point, I still believed almost everything she said. I came up to check the pipes, stack firewood, and replace a loose board on the dock before the first real cold snap. It was late October. The road was covered in wet red leaves. The lake looked flat and black under a low gray sky. The cabin smelled like cedar, old smoke, and the faint mineral smell of cold water. I was halfway through opening the windows when I noticed something small. The throw blanket on the couch was folded differently. That may sound ridiculous, but old houses teach you to notice patterns. My father always folded that blanket into thirds, then tucked the fringed edge underneath. It was one of those habits I had copied without thinking. The blanket was rolled. I stood there looking at it longer than I should have. Then I noticed 2 wine glasses drying upside down beside the sink. We didn't leave wine glasses out at the cabin. Mice got into everything. My father had drilled that into me for 20 years. I picked one up. It was clean, but not dusty. I told myself it was Emily. Maybe she had come up in September to get away for a night. Maybe she had brought a friend. Maybe she had forgotten. Then I looked toward the fireplace shelf. The guest book was slightly out of place. I opened it because that is what people do when they want reassurance. We look for proof that the thing bothering us has a simple explanation. The early pages were familiar. My mother's handwriting from 2002. First Christmas with snow all the way to the porch. My father's note from 2008. Daniel finally caught a fish bigger than bait. Claire's crayon drawing from when she was 5. A purple lake, a green bear, 3 stick figures holding hands. Then I found October 14th. E+M. Our little place feels like home. I knew Emily's handwriting. I had seen it on grocery lists, birthday cards, permission slips, notes she put in Claire's lunchbox. The E was hers. The looping M was hers too. I sat down in my father's chair. It was an old brown chair, with one arm darker than the other, because he always rested his hand there while reading. I had promised myself I would never replace it. That afternoon, I understood why grief and betrayal can feel so similar. Both make familiar places feel like they belong to someone else. The second page. I should have called Emily right then. I should have taken a picture, driven home, put the book on the kitchen table, and asked her who Mason was to her. But the entry was too small, too incomplete. I had spent my adult life repairing damage caused by people who rushed. Homeowners who ripped out walls before checking the structure. Contractors who covered a leak instead of finding its source. I knew better, so I kept reading. There were 4 more entries. None had full names. E+M, rain all night, didn't mind. E+M, no phones, no pretending. E+M, I wish we could stay. E+M, next time 2 days. The dates stretched back almost 11 months. Not every weekend, not even every month, but enough to create a pattern. One entry was dated the weekend Emily said she was in Boston for a donor retreat. Another was dated the week Mason told me he was helping his brother move in New Hampshire. The third was dated the night I stayed home with Claire because she had the flu. Emily had told me she was at the hospital with her mother. I read that page 3 times. Then I noticed something else. The handwriting changed near the bottom. In smaller letters, pressed into the page so hard the pen had almost torn through it, Emily had written, "You make me feel like I didn't disappear." That sentence hurt differently, not because it was romantic, because it was honest. It told me that whatever was happening between them had not started as one bad decision after too much wine. It had a language, a history, a private world, and they had built it in the place where my father taught me how to build things that were supposed to last. Quiet evidence. I took photographs of every page, not just the entries, the page numbers, the dates, the old family notes around them, the way the book sat beneath my father's photograph. I did it because I knew one thing clearly. If I confronted Emily with only anger, she could make the conversation about my anger. If I confronted her with facts, she would have to answer for what she had done. I checked the cabin carefully after that. I didn't touch anything I didn't need to. I wasn't looking for humiliating details. I was looking for truth. In the bathroom trash, beneath old paper towels, I found a receipt from a pharmacy in Middlebury. 2 toothbrushes, a travel-size bottle of men's face wash, a pack of batteries. The purchase had been made on a date Emily told me she was at a board meeting in Burlington. On the counter near the sink was a hair tie. Not Emily's usual black elastic. This one was pale blue, thin, expensive looking. I almost threw it away. Then I remembered Mason's wife, Rachel, had worn her hair tied back with pale blue bands at a barbecue 2 weeks earlier. I put it in an envelope. In the bedroom I found the fitted sheet on the bed my father and mother had once used. It had been washed recently. That should not have mattered. Sheets get washed. But I had changed those sheets myself in August. I knew the pattern: red pine cones and white snowflakes. The set on the bed now was plain cream. Emily had bought those sheets in September. She told me they were for the guest room at home. I stood in that doorway for a long time. I thought of my father sitting on the edge of that bed after my mother died. I thought of him telling me that loneliness was just love with nowhere to go. And I thought of Emily bringing another man into that room. Not a stranger. Mason. The dinner. I drove home before dark. Emily was already there when I walked in. She was at the kitchen island, dressed in a navy dress I had seen before, scrolling through her phone. Claire was upstairs talking to a friend on speakerphone and laughing too loudly. Emily looked up. "You're back early. Finished what I needed to do." She studied my face for half a second, not long enough to look concerned, long enough to measure me. "Everything okay at the cabin?" That was the first lie she told me after I found the book. "Fine," I said. "Just colder than I expected." She nodded and went back to her phone. Her screen lit up once before she turned it over. I caught only 2 words. "Miss you." She saw that I saw it. Her hand moved over the phone too fast. "Who was that?" I asked. "Rachel," she said. "Something about Mason's work party." I nodded. "How is Mason?" Her eyes flicked up. "Why?" "I haven't heard from him in a while." That was true. Mason had called less over the last year, missed my birthday dinner, skipped a weekend fishing trip, texted excuses about work, his mother, a bad back, anything that sounded just believable enough. Emily smiled. "Busy, I guess." Then she picked up her wine glass with both hands. Her left thumb had a faint red mark around it, like she had been wearing a ring that was slightly too tight. Emily did not wear rings other than her wedding ring. I remembered the pale blue hair tie. That night, I lay beside my wife and listened to the heat come on every 20 minutes. Emily slept with her back to me. At 1:13 a.m., her phone vibrated once on the nightstand. She reached for it in the dark, checked the screen, and held it against her chest before putting it back down. She thought I was asleep. I wasn't. Mason's story. The next morning, I called Mason. I didn't accuse him. I asked if he wanted coffee. He said yes immediately. Too immediately. We met at a diner near the interstate, the kind of place with laminated menus and a pie case that had been there since I was a kid. Mason arrived in a charcoal coat and expensive boots. He had gotten thinner. His hair was more gray than I remembered. He looked tired. Or guilty. Maybe those are the same thing after a while. "You look like hell," he said when he sat down. "Busy season." He gave a short laugh and looked down at the menu. I watched his hands. Mason had a habit when he was nervous. He rubbed the side of his thumb against his wedding band. He did it 3 times before the waitress brought coffee. "How's Rachel?" I asked. "Good. You two still thinking about selling the house?" "Maybe." He took a sip of coffee without looking at me. "You still go up to the lake much?" His hand stopped, just for a second. But I build my life around seconds like that. A water stain spreading from one corner of a ceiling. A hinge that squeaks only when someone is trying to close a door quietly. "Not really," he said. "Why?" "I was there yesterday." "Oh." "Found the guest book." Mason looked at me then, not like a friend, not like a brother, like a man standing too close to the edge of something he had spent a year pretending wasn't there. "Danny, don't." My voice was quiet. That surprised both of us. "I'm not here to hear a version that makes you feel better." He looked down. "It wasn't supposed to happen." That sentence has probably been spoken by every person who ever chose the easy lie over the hard truth. "How long?" Mason didn't answer. "How long?" "Since last winter." The answer hit me, but I stayed still. "At the cabin?" He closed his eyes. "Not only there." I felt something inside me go very quiet. "Did you sleep with my wife?" "Yes." I wish I could tell you I yelled. I wish I had hit the table hard enough to make the coffee jump. But I just looked at him. "How many times?" He swallowed. "I don't know." "That means more than once." "Yes." "More than 10? "Yes." I nodded. "Did Rachel know?" "No." Did Claire ever see you together? No. Are you sure? Yes. Did you bring her to my father's cabin? He looked like he might cry. Yes. Did you sleep in my parents' bed? Yes. I stood up. Mason reached toward my wrist, but I stepped back. Don't touch me. The waitress looked over. I put cash on the table. Mason said my name once more. Danny, I'm sorry. I looked at him. No, you're sorry, I know. Then I walked out into the cold. The hidden life. I didn't go home right away. I drove to a job site in Essex where my crew was restoring a 19th-century farmhouse. I stood in the unfinished kitchen while two men I trusted argued about trim measurements. Nobody asked me what was wrong. Good men often know when silence is the only thing they can offer. Around noon, I called my attorney. Her name was Sandra Wilkes. She had handled my father's estate and helped me set up my business years earlier. I told her I needed advice before I did anything stupid. That's usually the right time to call, she said. I gave her only the facts: suspected affair, written evidence, the cabin, a shared home, a child. She told me to preserve what I had lawfully found, avoid accessing accounts I did not have permission to use, avoid threats, and speak with a family law specialist before moving money, changing locks, or making promises. It was not satisfying advice. It was good advice. That evening, I checked our shared household calendar. Emily and I used it for Claire's school events, contractor appointments, birthdays, dentist visits, and apparently for hiding an affair in plain sight. I saw entries marked grant follow-up, donor call, volunteer breakfast, and site review. They were all created by Emily. Each one appeared on dates from the guest book. Some included locations that made no sense: a donor call scheduled from 7 p.m. to 10 p.m., a volunteer breakfast on a Saturday night, a site review in a town 60 miles from any project she worked on. I didn't need to open her phone. She had already left the map behind. I printed the calendar. Then I found a receipt in the pocket of her winter coat. It was from a small restaurant in Middlebury: 2 entrees, 1 bottle of red wine, dessert for 2. The date matched an entry in the guest book. No phones, no pretending. I sat on the floor of our bedroom closet with that receipt in my hand. I remembered Emily telling me that night she had been too tired to eat after a long donor meeting. I had made her tea. I had brought it upstairs. I had kissed her forehead while she lay in bed facing the wall. She had said, "Thank you for understanding." That was the detail that broke me. Not that she had eaten with him, not even that she had gone to the cabin. It was that she had come home from being with him and accepted tenderness from me like it was something she deserved. The confrontation. I waited until Claire was at school the next morning. Emily was in the kitchen making coffee. She was wearing one of my old college sweatshirts, the blue one with a paint stain near the cuff. For a second she looked like the woman I married. Then I remembered that people can wear familiar clothes and still be strangers. I placed the guest book on the kitchen table. Emily stopped moving. "What is that?" "You know what it is." Her face changed slowly. First confusion, then recognition, then calculation. "Dan, don't lie to me." She sat down. I opened the book to October 14th. "Tell me what this means." Emily looked at the page. "It's not what you think." I almost laughed. "Then tell me what I think." She pressed her lips together. "Mason and we got close." "That is not an answer. It started as talking. At my father's cabin?" Her eyes filled. "Not at first." "When?" "Last winter." "How long have you been sleeping with him?" "I don't know." "That is what he said." Her head snapped up. "You talked to Mason?" "Yes." She looked toward the window. I watched her understand that the story she had been managing was gone. "I'm sorry." "Don't give me the smallest word you have for the biggest thing you've done." Emily started crying. I felt invisible. There it was, the explanation people use when they want pain to sound like permission. "You felt invisible, so you took my friend to the cabin my father built. It wasn't about hurting you. You knew it would. I didn't think you'd find out." That was the first honest thing she said. I looked at the book. "What did you mean when you wrote, 'No pretending'?" She wiped her face. "I meant, with him, I didn't have to be perfect." "Perfect for who?" "For everyone. For Claire, for work, for you." "Did I ask you to be perfect?" No. Did I ever ask you to lie? No. Did I ever tell you to take off your ring before you met him? Her face went still. I had not mentioned the mark on her finger. Did you wear his ring? Sometimes. My stomach turned. It was stupid. It was just, don't. Don't make it small. She covered her face. He gave it to me after my birthday. What else did he give you? Nothing that matters. You kept it. She said nothing. Where is it? In a box at work. I nodded slowly. So you wore another man's ring. You brought him to the cabin. You slept in my parents' bed. You came home and let me hold you. And now you want me to believe none of it mattered. I don't know how to fix this. You don't. You tell the truth. That's all you do now. The other wife. I asked Emily one question before I left the kitchen. Does Rachel know? Emily shook her head. No. Did Mason ever tell you he was leaving her? She hesitated. He said he was thinking about it. Of course he did. Did you believe him? She didn't answer. I wanted to. That was enough. I spent that night in the guest room, not because I was afraid of Emily, because I couldn't stand the thought of being in our bed while she was across the hall carrying a secret I had finally forced into the light. At 6:40 the next morning, I sent Rachel a message. I need to speak with you privately. It concerns Mason and Emily. I have written evidence. I won't pressure you, but you deserve the chance to see it. She replied 27 minutes later. What are you talking about? We met in a quiet coffee shop near her office. Rachel was 44, a physical therapist, practical and kind. She had brought Claire a handmade scarf every Christmas since she was little. She sat across from me with both hands around a paper cup. Is Mason okay? Physically, yes. I showed her photographs of the guest book. I showed her the calendar dates. I did not show her anything unnecessary. Rachel looked at the entries for a long time. Then she said, E and M. Yes. Emily and Mason. Yes. Rachel didn't cry right away. She asked questions. How long? He said since last winter. Did they use your cabin? Yes. Did she know what that place meant to you? Yes. Rachel put her hand over her mouth. Mason told me he was doing weekend repair jobs. Emily told me she was traveling for work. We sat there in silence, two people who had not chosen each other, trying to understand what had been done to them. I found the ring receipt, Rachel said finally. I looked up. A few months ago. I found a charge from a jewelry store. I asked him about it. He told me it was for his sister. It wasn't. No. She laughed once, but there was no humor in it. I thought I was being paranoid. You weren't. Rachel stared at the guest book photograph. What are you going to do? Talk to a lawyer, protect Claire, figure out where I can live without making her life worse. Rachel nodded. Good. What are you going to do? For today, I'm going to go home and make Mason tell me the truth without anyone else in the room. Consequences. The next few weeks were not dramatic in the way movies make things dramatic. There were no screaming matches in restaurants, no viral videos, no perfect speech that made everyone clap. There were appointments, there were documents, there were conversations with lawyers about what was shared, what was separate, what should not be discussed in front of Claire. There were nights when Emily slept at a short-term rental near her office. There were mornings when Claire asked why her mother's car was not in the driveway. I told her the truth in the only way a father can, when a child is too young to carry the whole truth. Mom and I are having serious problems. None of this is because of you. We both love you. Claire looked at me for a long time. Did she do something? She made choices that hurt our family. Claire nodded as if she understood. Then she went upstairs and shut her door. I stood at the bottom of the stairs for almost an hour. Emily wanted to explain everything to me. She sent long messages. She said Mason had made her feel seen. She said she had been lonely. She said she hated herself for what she had done. I believed she hated the consequences. I did not know if she hated the choices. There is a difference. One night, she asked if we could talk in the kitchen. I said yes. She looked smaller somehow. No makeup, hair tied back. Her wedding ring was on the counter between us. I ended it, she said. When? After you talked to him. So after you got caught. She flinched. Yes, that honesty mattered. It did not heal anything. He told me he loved me, she said. And He also told Rachel he wanted to work on their marriage. I looked at her. Did that surprise you? I don't know. You knew you were not his only life. Tears came back. I knew. I just didn't want to say it out loud. There was nothing I could do with that. I had spent 16 years being the man she came home to, and for nearly a year, she had been treating that stability as a place to rest between visits to someone else. The cabin again. In December, I went back to the cabin with Claire. Emily did not come. She asked if she could. I told her no. Not as punishment. Not because I wanted to own the cabin or use it as a weapon, but because I needed one place in the world where my daughter and I could breathe without pretending. The first snow had come early. The road was narrow and white. Claire sat beside me in the truck wearing headphones, her boots pressed against the heater. When we arrived, she looked at the cabin for a long time. Grandpa loved this place. He did. Do you still? I looked at the porch, the chimney, the lake behind the trees. I'm trying to. We spent the weekend doing ordinary things. We made pancakes that came out too dark because Claire kept changing the music. We played cards by the fire. I showed her how to split kindling without taking off her gloves. She beat me at gin rummy 3 times and accused me of letting her win. I told her I had no idea what she meant. She smiled. It was the first real smile I had seen from her in weeks. On Sunday morning, she found the guest book. Can I write in it? My hand froze around the coffee mug. Then I looked at my father's photograph. I imagined what he would say. Walter Mercer had not been a complicated man. He believed you repaired what could be repaired. And when something could not be repaired, you did not burn the whole house down around it. You saved what was still standing. Yes, I told Claire. You can write in it. She took a pen and wrote slowly. First snow weekend with Dad. We made terrible pancakes. The lake was beautiful. Then she handed me the pen. Your turn. I stared at the blank line underneath hers. I thought about writing something angry. I thought about crossing out every entry Emily had made. But truth does not need erasing to remain true. So I wrote. December 10th, starting again, epilogue. 6 months later, 6 months after I found the guest book, the cabin looked different, not because I had renovated it. I didn't tear down walls. I didn't replace the furniture. I didn't throw away my father's chair. I repaired the dock, repainted the porch railing, replaced the old cream sheets in the bedroom with a blue and gray quilt Claire chose herself. She said the old room needed to stop feeling sad. I agreed. Emily and I were legally separated by then. The paperwork was still moving through the system, because real life is slower than the stories people tell at parties. We had a parenting schedule. We communicated about Claire through a shared calendar and short, practical messages. Sometimes Emily apologized. Sometimes she cried when she picked Claire up. Sometimes she looked at me like she was waiting for the old version of me to return. He never did. I did not hate her every day. That was the strangest part. Hate takes energy. And after a while, I needed mine for Claire, for work, for sleep, for remembering that I still had a life that belonged to me. Mason moved out of the house he shared with Rachel. I heard that through someone else. I did not ask for details. Rachel filed for divorce. She and I spoke twice after that, both times about practical things. Therapists for children, how to answer questions from mutual friends, how to avoid making pain into public entertainment. We were not friends exactly, but we understood something about each other that most people never have to understand. We knew what it felt like to find out that someone had been living a second life beside us. Claire finished 7th grade in June. At her school concert, she played violin in the 2nd row. She missed one note in the middle of the piece and looked directly at me afterward with a face that said, "Did you hear that?" I nodded like it was the best note anyone had ever played. Emily was sitting 3 seats away. We did not speak until the concert ended. Then we both stood when Claire ran toward us. For 1 second, the 3 of us hugged her at the same time. It was not the family I thought I had, but it was a moment where nobody lied. A week later, Claire and I went back to the cabin for the start of summer. The lake was bright under the morning sun. Loons called somewhere beyond the dock. The old pine trees leaned in the wind exactly the way they had when I was a boy. Claire opened the guest book. She flipped past my father's notes. past old Christmas messages, past the pages that had changed my life. Then she stopped at the page where she had written about terrible pancakes. "Dad? Yeah? Do you think Grandpa would be proud of us?" I looked out at the water. "I think he'd be proud that we came back." Claire nodded. Then she wrote a new entry. June 18th. Dad taught me how to fix the dock. I was better at it than him. I leaned over and read it. "That is not historically accurate." She laughed. "It's my version." I looked at her, then at the cabin, then at the old green guest book resting open on the table. For the first time since October, I didn't see it as the place where my marriage had ended. I saw it as proof that something else had survived, not the lie. Me. And if you're listening to this while carrying a truth you didn't ask for, I hope you remember something. Finding out what happened may change your life, but it does not get to decide who you become next. If this story stayed with you, share your thoughts in the comments. What would you have done after finding the guest book? And if you enjoy emotional stories about betrayal, truth, and rebuilding, subscribe for the next one.
Clock strikes, silence wraps the room. A gentle breath, memories bloom. In corners where laughter used to spill, you linger here, you always will. Yeah.
Curtains drawn, the sunlight spills on me, tracing lines you left in quiet honesty. Words unspoken, pressed in dust and air, soft echoes marking everywhere. Yeah.
Heartbeat steady in the hush you made.
Caught between retreat and the parade, I find myself replaying every scene, every little whisper in between.
You are the thunder in a sunlit haze, the taste of coffee at the break of day. Still I wear your favorite jacket, walk familiar alleys, looking for laughter we used to chase.
I couldn't bother living.
She steps in, painted in autumn tones, speaking truth in melodies grown. Her words a shelter from the gentle rain, wishing I could go back there again. We made mistakes, tied up in time, but every fall felt worth the climb. When comfort wore your cologne and smile, a moment's warmth that stays a while. Yeah. You are the thunder in a sunlit haze, the taste of coffee at the break of